Hello again and welcome to the Warrington Game Imperial Guard Tactics video. Now before we get into today's video, I would like to say a huge thank you to Daniel Hintendorfer, what an absolutely fantastic name, for sending in some awesome pictures of his Imperial Guard army. These guys look absolutely fantastic. Daniel loved the consistent sort of snowy theme throughout the army and the really just crisp, consistent paint scheme across the whole thing. Also quite enjoying some of the more heretical units in there, like the Tyranids and the Squighoppers and those creepy demon looking things. All very cool. So thank you for sending in these pictures. They look absolutely fantastic. If anyone else has got any cool pictures they would like me to use in my videos, please post them on my Facebook page. There will be a link down in the description below. Now today guys, what we're going to be taking a look at is primary objectives, specifically how you can win your games if you really just focus on primary objectives. You see, one of the biggest criticisms that gets leveled against Guard in 9th edition, and one that I have also leveled against it, is that we just bleed secondaries. We just bleed secondaries, and because of this, we're always going to lose the games because the opponent's able to get an roughly equal amount of primary than us, and then we just bleed all our points away in secondaries, and then we lose. Now that is a problem, but there is a way of mitigating it by just saying, damn the secondaries, we're going to focus on primary objectives. Okay, now there is two ways of looking at this, and I will be doing another video about how you can win by really focusing on your secondary objectives as well. So the two that both schools of thought are correct, but it's very important as a Guard player you kind of go into a battle and you build your army list with a certain way in mind. Either you're going to be trying your best to focus on primary, or you're going to be trying your best to play the secondary game. And you might try and play both. But if you are considering, incorporating, really focusing on the primary objectives, then this video is going to be important for you. Now, what's really important to understand about primary objectives, one thing that a lot of people sort of misunderstand when they first glance at the 9th edition rules, is that they think, well, as long as I get my primary points, that's fine. As long as I get my primary points, I'm not too worried about what my opponent is doing. If you do that, you're going to lose the game. Okay? And I know this because I have lost the game from having that attitude. The way you win on primary points, and this is especially true for Imperial Guard but can be applied to any army, it's not about the points you're scoring, it's about the points your opponent is scoring. And when you play the primary game, when you're focusing on primary objectives, it doesn't really matter how many points you score. You should max them out, and most players will max out primary given half a chance. At the very least, they'll get 40 out of 45 because they only need to hold 2 objectives for the whole game to get 40 out of 45 points. That's all they need to do. And if they're in a 6 objective game, that's pretty easy to do. And even in a 4 objective game, it's kind of easy for your opponent to do if all you're doing is thinking about your points. Okay? The way you win on primary is by denying your opponent primary victory points. You don't care about anything but denying your opponent those precious primary points. You see, you're going to get 45 points. You're going to max that out by turn 3 because hopefully you're going to be on at least more objectives than your opponent. But if your opponent is stuck on one objective the whole game, and this is why it's very your opponent can never get more than one objective. That's what you do. You aim to just dominate the objectives as much as possible. You don't worry about your opponent getting line break. You don't worry about your opponent getting engaged in all fronts. If he's going to do that, he's going to do that. Okay, let him get 35 points on his second objective. Doesn't matter. Let him get maxed in the ranks. Don't worry about that. Because if he does that, but he spends the whole game on one objective, that's all he gets. And maybe even a turn, every so often you take that objective off him, your opponent is at best going to get 20 points for primary. That's it. 20 points. That's it. Okay? Because he's sat an objective for four scoring turns. Then you take a look at your own situation. You're like, right, well, I maxed out primary because I made sure I was on more objectives than my opponent every single turn of the game. I built my entire list. I just took millions of like conscripts and objective secured troops and really hyper durable things, and I never let my opponent go anywhere near an objective. So I've got 45. So I'm already 25 points ahead of my opponent. Now let's say your opponent, he got his max in the max. He was blasting you all game. Let's say your opponent overall gets, 2/3 of the secondary victory points. He's getting 30 victory points. He has to be generous. Let's say he gets 35 victory points. At that point, you're like, okay, he's got 35 victory points and he's got his 20 for his primary because I wasn't able to stop him from being an objective, at least one objective all game. Okay, so your opponent's got 55 victory points. It's a respectable score, but if you've done your job right and you've been on more objectives than your opponent every single turn without fail, you're already on 45. That means from your secondary points, you only need to get 11 points to win the game. If you raise the banners high, if you're really focusing on individual just points on the map, just primary objective points, that's all you care about, then that means you can pick secondaries that benefit you as well, like raise the banners high. So if you do that, you should also have, the majority of the points for raise the banners. So you already won. You've already won. If you just deny your opponent primary or game and you get max points and then you max out your just one secondary of raise the banners, you're already on 60 points. You haven't even taken into account two of the secondaries yet. You've not even thought about them. Even if you just get 10 points from raise the banner, and then you get, but you're going to get 15 because you're going to be on objectives the whole game, right? And if you're going to be on objectives the whole game, well, guess what? You're probably going to be in 3 table quarters the whole game as well. Because you're going to be, one objective in your deployment zone, and then 2 in the middle, more than likely. That means you're going to probably have engaged all fronts to at least 10 points. So now you're on, 70 points? If you include your painting score, you're on 80 points. Your opponent can max out all his... Right, if you think about this, your opponent can max out all his secondaries. Let's say he gets 45 points in secondaries, but then he only gets 20 points on primary. Your opponent is maxed out at 65 out of 90 points. Maxed. You start off on 45 because you've been dominating the primary game. You only need to get 21 points to win. Now, if you've engaged in all fronts every turn, you've got 10 points at least. If you've raised the banners high for most of the game, you've got at least 10 points. I mean, you should have won by this point, but you've got at least 10 points. And guess what? All you've been doing is playing the primary game, and you've picked secondaries which support your primary game. Okay, and that's what's so important. When you're playing the primaries, when you're playing into the primary system, you're going to have to really focus on that. Your secondaries support that move. And you don't worry about killing anything. Killing things does not even come into your equation. If you kill some stuff, that's pretty helpful. That's pretty handy. I mean, I know we're taking it to an extreme. Of course you're going to try and kill something. But the point is that you're just hyper durable, and you just spend the whole game just sat on objectives. And you might say, well, how can you even build a guard army that can do that? How can you even do that? Well, it's not that hard. You take 3 units of Bulgrin, you're halfway there. You don't have to take 3 units of 9 Bulgrin, apart from the fact that it's going to break the bank. But you can convert Bulgrins pretty quickly, guys. You go to Age of Sigmar, you get yourself some ogres or iron guts, whatever the hell they're called these days, and you can get 6 Ogrins for the price. 6 Bulgrin, which you can convert, 6 ogres you convert into Bulgrins. You can get that for half the price as if you just bought 3 actual genuine Bulgrins. So you're going to have to do some conversion, Or you could easily, or there's loads of third-party companies. You go to Puppets War, there's guys in very similar Bulgarian-like armour. You can buy like 5 of them for like £20, €20. It's cheap as chips. It's dirt cheap. You go on there, either way, you build yourself up 27 Bulgarians, and guess what? It's like 1,000 points. It's like 1,000 points. So you're already, doing really well in terms of, filling your 2k points up. Then you're just like, oh, I'll just take like loads of other really durable units. Crusaders, Bulgarians, conscripts. You've got lots of options. I'm not saying you max out Crusaders and you max out Bulgarians. What I'm saying is, guys, we have options to make very durable units. And one thing I forgot to mention in my conscripts video is the fact that conscripts still benefit from regimental doctrines. And so you take Wilderness Survivors, you've got a bunch of conscripts with 4+ cover, 4+ save. That's pretty good. That makes them pretty durable. So my point is that you can win the game by not even killing anything if you just focus on winning on primary objectives. And when you win on primary objectives, it's not about the points you're scoring, it's about the points you are denying your opponent. Now, this is not to say it's easy to win by playing the primary game. In fact, it's probably easier to win by playing the secondary game, but we'll get into that video another time. The problem with playing the primary game is there will occasionally be missions that you come across that make it really hard. One example of which being the very first mission in the book, Retrieval Mission. It's a 6 objective game. Playing the primary is very hard the more objectives there are on the board. Okay? Unfortunately, it seems like the majority of the missions are, 4 or 5 objective missions, so it's not too bad. And as you're playing, so most of the missions you should be able to just dominate. Now, what's really interesting about the but it is difficult. If the more objectives there are, the harder it is. One last thing to mention about playing primary is that it's quite interesting because you don't need to necessarily advance into your opponent's deployment zone. The thing about 9th edition is that you don't really have, if you're playing the primary, you don't really have an excuse to advance past the halfway line, because once you've got the objective in your home deployment zone secured, and you've got the 2 to 3 in no man's land secured, you don't really need to advance beyond that point. There's no need to. All you want to do is just turtle up, lock down, and win games that way. That's what you want to be doing, guys. And it's the whole MO of these armies that I keep referring to. It's the whole MO of these armies that are winning through durability. They just sit on the objectives, getting Homer Simpsoned, punched in the face repeatedly, and by the time the enemy has driven them off, lo and behold, the enemy's scored nothing. Scored nothing. Now, it is interesting playing the primary, and it does mean that you don't have to have as much interaction with your opponent, but like I said, it does carry its risks. Anyway, guys, we'll end the video there, otherwise I'm going to be at risk of going round and round in circles, more so than I normally do. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's viable, just like I'm just going to focus on primaries and secondaries that support my primaries? That's all I'm going to do. If you think it's possible, please let me know down in the comment section below. If you think it doesn't really work, not ideal, let me know. Put it down in the comment section below. Anyway, guys, hope you guys enjoyed this video, and of course, I'll see you guys next time.